Hi everybody and welcome back to Knitting with Betty. I'm Betty, your host for today, and it has been quite a while since I've sort of sat down and had a little catch up with you. Lots of things have been going on behind the scenes though, so shall we get into it? So I have finished this beautiful little number here, and I am pleased to say, as you probably already know because I've done a test knitting called short. It's my second ever, first ever knitting pattern, and it will be available to buy in January. So it's currently going through the test knitting stage. I've got some fabulous ladies doing some test knits for me, and at the moment I've only got up to size large being test knitted. I have spoken to Susan about it, thinking, maybe it's because I'm a new designer and people aren't sure of who I am. But apparently it is a lot more difficult to fill those larger sizes on test knits purely from an economic scale. So it's more yarn, so it's more expensive for people who are larger to do a test knit. And also it takes longer to knit a bigger size because you're knitting a bigger circumference. It obviously takes a little bit longer than the smaller sizes, which knit up quite quickly. So that's why I've struggled to fill those larger slots, which is funny because I thought it would be the other way around. I thought it'd be more difficult to find smaller people, but that's the way it goes, I suppose. So I still am looking for those larger sizes. So if you are from, I think it's extra large to 5XL. So I should have looked that up beforehand. Well, let me find out what that means in inches. So that would be a 44 to 46 inch bust, or if you're in centimetres, 111.5 centimetres to 117 centimetres. So if that is the extra large, and then the 5XL, so it goes up to a 60 to 62 inch bust, which is 152 to 158 centimetres. So if you fall in between that range, so that's the lowest is 40 inch, and the largest is 60 inch, or 62 inches. If you fall in between that and you would like to be a test knitter, please do let me know. I'm desperate. I want to make sure that this pattern is perfect before it goes to for sale. So there is a workaround if I don't get the larger sizes for my test knit. I will still release the pattern in January, but if you are in that larger category of sizes, I will offer you the knitting pattern for free. So essentially you will then become a test knitter, just so that I can make sure that those sizes are all good and fit properly when it gets to those larger sizes, because I have already worked out there's been many problems with this pattern, my people. So I managed to pick one of the most annoyingly complicated patterns that there is. So let me show you the inspiration. The inspiration was from 1949 April Stitchcraft magazine. So I saw this little number here and thought it was wonderful. I love the pattern. Still do love the pattern, but it has its quirks. So the chart for the pattern is a little bit complicated. Let's see if I can bring it up. I did have it printed out, but I spilt tea all over it, so it's not the best. It looks crazy, the chart, because it was quite difficult to plot, because it essentially, you're increasing stitches to create the fan pattern, but then at the top of the pattern, to create the pattern, the fan pattern pinching in, you're then decreasing stitches. And this has caused all sorts of problems. Let's hello doggy. My doggy's come to say hello. She's going to lie on the bed right in the middle of my stuff. Thank you very much, doggy. You're going to behave yourself. She's the naughty one. So let me see. It's opening up at the moment, but it looks absolutely crazy, the chart, because it's really difficult to plot when you're increasing stitches in the middle of things and decreasing stitches in the middle of things. And if you centralise the pattern, so it's an 18 stitch repeat, then it goes up to 20 stitches, then 22, 24 at the widest, and then it comes back down to those 18 stitches at the end of the pattern repeat. Which is all fine and well, because you're adding in stitches either end, and then you're taking out the stitches on the top 6 rows of the pattern. But where you have underarm shaping, or the neckline for instance, that essentially breaks up the pattern, so it interrupts how many you add in and how many you take out. So you can be adding in too many stitches or taking out too many stitches, or not enough stitches in some cases. So it was all very mind-blowing. And also, because you're increasing stitches row by row, each stitch count that you get will be different based on which row you stop at. So let's show you the chart. Hope this shows up. So it looks absolutely crazy and like the stitches don't line up, but I promise you they do. I might redraft this. One of my test knitters is having sort of issues. It doesn't work in her brain, this chart, but it does work, the chart. I have gone through it and it does work. It's just you have to ignore that the purl stitches aren't lining up. So can you see where they've like shifted across? It looks like they shouldn't line up, but they do. But yeah, so I had all sorts of problems with the stitch count when it came to the underarm cast off, because I would give a stitch count, but it would be based on row 1 of the pattern, or row 12 of the pattern. Whereas if you're on row, say 6, you would have a completely different stitch count. So I've had to then go back in and, with the help of mathematics, work out how many stitches you will actually have based on where you are in the pattern. And of course, every size is different. So every size will finish on a different row or finish at a different point in the pattern as well. So it's been absolute nightmare to do. And I've been doing it on the spreadsheet. I did, to check my mathematics and I've got everything right, I have had to go old school. So I have had to chart it out on paper to see what the where it's broken the pattern up based on your decreases, and then work out how many plus and minus stitches are on each row based on that. And then obviously at the neckline it happens again too. So this is for the medium, the green. I did the black markings, which come out a little bit further this way. This is size large, so I need to go in and do my row counts for all the mathematics of plus and minuses for my green line, which is the medium. So I've had to go through every single size like this. I've only got 2 at the moment. The extra small and small I know are fine, because I've knitted the small, and the extra small isn't that different from the small. Really, there's like a few stitches in it. So, but the larger sizes, I'm going to have to plot out on graph paper every single one to make sure that the mathematics are correct and how to work out the stitch counts. And I find it easier this way, because although you probably can do this in a spreadsheet, because of where you're breaking up the pattern, I couldn't like visualize it. I'm much more of a visual learner, and having done sort of dressmaking pattern grading, it's a lot easier for me to just have it in front of me. I can see what's going on. I can see where the pattern repeat is, and I know what the shaping should look like in a dressmaking pattern, so I can then visualize it better in a knitting setting, and hopefully it will work out better. So my test knitters have had to wait. I've broken up the pattern into parts that I'm giving them. So they've got, at the moment, they've got the pattern up to the underarm split. The next bit is the underarm split and the shaping, which is what I'm working through at the moment to make sure I've got the correct stitch count. Once I've done it for the front sections, I also need to do it for the back sections, because you do the back placket sort of halfway through the back, and depending on which row you are on in the 12 row repeat of the pattern, it depends what your stitch count is. So the spreadsheet only gives me the stitch count on that 12th row, so I then have to then go and work it out to make sure that I give a correct stitch count. So it's all been very complicated, And I only found this out, going through the pattern myself. I'm knitting a second version. So I'm knitting a long sleeve version in this gorgeous Christmassy red. I have done the front. Whoops. Just scooched off all my stitches there, but I'll pop those back on later. So I've done the front and I'm working through the back now. And I only found out through sort of working through the pattern that this quirk with the stitch counts existed. So it's a good job that I have gone through it so systematically and doing a second version. Because the first version, obviously there were mistakes in the pattern that I had to tweak. So I'm going through the pattern again with my second version, making sure, and also because I wanted to do the long sleeve version as well, making sure that all the instructions are clear and make sense and the stitch counts are correct. Now, the other thing, the other quirk of the pattern is where you have interrupted the pattern with your neckline and your underarm shaping, is it knocks off the stitch count based on where you're breaking up the pattern. So if I look at this one, maybe we get a whole repeat. Look at this row. So here's a whole repeat here. So as you can see, you're adding in a stitch here and in a stitch here. And then on the upper rows, you're taking out 4 stitches. So for the first 6 rows, you're adding in every other row 2 stitches per repeat. And then on the rows above that, you're both adding in those 2 stitches per repeat, but you're taking out the 4 stitches per repeat. So once you get to the last row, you've taken out enough to balance out those ones that you've added in. Now this changes if you break up this pattern. If you decrease and you are halfway through or 3/4 or even this way through, it changes the stitch count. So you have to have it directly in the middle, broken up directly in the middle for it to still work, so that you still got adding 1 in and then taking 2 out in the top rows. So if you're directly halfway through the pattern, that's absolutely fine. It will still work. But if you're, say, here, you have then not taken enough stitches out. Can you see that properly? I don't know. My hand was in the way. You will have not taken enough stitches out. So you then, at the side, have to compensate for that. And that's what I call balancing the stitches. So I have used this pattern. I've done plenty of video tutorials, but when you get your PDF knitting pattern, you click on the link to the video and it will give you a video what I mean about balancing the stitches and how you do that. Because if you don't, you will end up with either too many stitches or too few stitches, and it will drive you mad because you'll be like, Betty, this pattern doesn't work. But it does. You just have to pay close attention to what you're doing. It's not necessarily a knit for knitting in front of the TV and switching off. You have to have your wits about you, because otherwise, like me, it will drive you absolutely bonkers, this pattern. But it's worth it in the end, I think, because it's absolutely beautiful. I do love it. And look at the sleeve. So this is the short sleeve version, which is just a centralised pattern with stocking stitch either side, which that's brilliant, because then that means you're not breaking up this pattern. So a whole lot easier. For the long sleeve version, I'll go and get the long sleeve. I thought I was so prepared for this video, but I wasn't. So this is the long sleeve version. It's all over print in the same fan stitch print. So as you can see, all over. Lovely, lovely. But where you're adding in your stitches for your increases from the cuff to the underarm, it's done in stocking stitch. Now this you won't really see because it's that sort of underarm seam. This is done because I did try to do it in pattern, but because of those quirks of the pattern and like not having enough stitches or having too many stitches, it was just throwing the stitch count, and I thought it's going to be so much easier just do it in stocking stitch. That's what the original pattern said, to do it in stocking stitch. And now I know why, because it doesn't work if you do it in pattern. So you're adding in sort of a central stripe of stocking stitch, but then keeping this fabulous pattern, and then just a little bit of shaping for the sleeve head. So the sleeves are less complicated, but again, you will need to balance your stitches to get the right stitch count. And I think this one I was ending up with too few stitches. Yeah. Oh, I don't remember. Anyway, it was driving me nuts. But if you watch the balancing the stitches video, it will help you. And on that 12th row of the pattern, it's just you'll be working. If you're in the round, it will just be a knit stitch, but actually, no, you will have split at that point for working in the flat. So the 12th row will be a purl row, and that is the row that you can do a little bit jiggery pokery. If you don't have the right stitch count, you can take out the stitches you need or add in the stitches you need right at the ends. So there are workarounds, but you do have to keep your wits about you. It's not the easiest of patterns. So that's why I'd say it's an intermediate to expert. Well, sorry, I just stopped that. I think we're back. Okay, so pattern is intermediate to expert, and that is because even though I'm all for beginners, like if you want to go straight in and you're a beginner and go for it, then absolutely I'm not going to stop you, because I think when you challenge yourself, you don't know what you're capable of. So absolutely, if you're a beginner, I think adventurous beginner, then go for it. If you're not an adventurous beginner, start with something a little bit easier, because this will blow your mind like it has mine. But yeah, so it is intermediate to expert because of those quirks of the fan print. But and that's perhaps why the original pattern only has one size, because they couldn't be bothered to work out all the other sizes because it's so complicated. But and that's also why the first section you're not doing any increasing or decreasing at the side seams. It's simply the same amount of stitches from the waist to the underarm split, because it's such a stretchy print. You don't need it to be smaller at the waist. Because it will just stretch over your bust and fit nicely. And it does have 2 inches of negative ease to give you a nice vintage fit. So things that are different in the pattern that I'm going to be releasing in January. What do we think about the sleeves? They came out quite baggy, I think. I'm not a big fan of the baggy sleeves, but one of my test knitters liked the baggy sleeves, and she wants to keep them this looseness. I prefer a more fitted vintage look, but I know not everyone likes that sort of true vintage look. If you want it to be sort of in a modern setting, which I think absolutely you can. Like this, I think this would look really nice, like with business trousers and a suit jacket. I think it would look quite smart. So you can wear it to work. So absolutely style it in a modern way if you want to. But yeah, what do we think about the sleeves? Do we keep the baggy ones, or do I alter the pattern so it's slightly more fitted? Let me know in the comments what you prefer. I'd say sort of from a more like longevity of the pattern, like having a more modern fit to it in the sleeves would probably be better, because I know not everyone likes that true vintage style. And I'm not doing another option in the pattern where you get baggy sleeves or slim fitting sleeves. I'm not doing that. I've already got one too many with doing a long sleeve version as well as a short sleeve version. So let's keep it simple. This is a more fitted, the long sleeve version. So do I keep this as a more loose fitting, or do I make it more true to the vintage kind of aesthetic? Well, let me know in the comments what you think. I'll go by what the masses say, because you guys are the ones who are going to be buying it, hopefully. So that's sort of the processes that I've been doing behind the pattern. It has been a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be, and taken a lot more of my time than it should have. Like if I based this pattern, like if I priced it according to the hours that I've put into developing the pattern, it would be so expensive. So I'm not doing this for a monetary gain kind of point of view. I'm doing it because I love the challenge of working it out. even though it was driving me nuts. And yeah, it's been a really nice process to sort of be a designer again, because that's what my degree was in, and that's what sort of my whole being was before I moved into sort of the marketing profession. So it's been so nice to use my creative side again, as well as using a different side of my brain. So I've never really been that into mathematics. Like so have I told you this story before? But I took the higher paper at GCSE for maths, and on the calculator paper, we had to use scientific calculators that do like all the graphs and all the fancy stuff. I was so stressed during my exams that I forgot how to use that scientific calculator. So essentially it was useless, because I was like, I can't remember how to do it. So I genuinely thought I was going to fail my mathematics GCSE. Turned out I didn't. I got a B, which I was absolutely over the moon with. Like, usually I'm like an overachiever, and like I would have wanted an A or an A star, but B, I was so relieved that I didn't have to do another 2 years of maths and take the exams again. I was absolutely thrilled with a B. So maths has never been my strong point. And also, like, the way that we taught mathematics at school, I think I've said this before to like various friends, like, if people had like taught me mathematics in a knitting context, or even in a fashion context, when you're doing fashion pattern cutting or grading, you need to be good at maths. If I'd been taught, with a context to maths, then it would have made a whole lot more sense and been more enjoyable for everyone. So teachers missing a trick there. But also, like, I think they should teach you how to like do a tax return, because that involves maths, and that's like useful life skills, rather than learning like how to find out the area of a triangle and all that jazz. Anyway, that's beside the point. It's been really nice using a different part of my brain. So during the day, like, I'm doing my marketing work, it's very much computer based. It's putting images together with words, and it's not rocket science, it's marketing. You do have to have a little bit of know-how with marketing, how to tap into people's psychology a bit, but it's not rocket science, is it? So it's been really nice to sort of get my teeth into something and apply it and make it work. And even though it's driven me absolutely nuts, I've actually figured out what was going wrong and why it was going wrong, so that I can impart it to you when you buy the pattern. And don't your stitch counts don't add up, I will know why. So yeah, it's been great fun to do. I'm already thinking about my next knit. I do have one in mind. Not sure if I'm going to be able to pull it off, but it's a lot simpler. But if I can't do that one, which will be a cardigan, there is another cardigan that I want to do. So I've got things going on that I want to be doing next, but that won't be until January, because this is taking up so much of my time at the moment, trying to figure out all the different sizes. But yeah, it's been a really fun process to get creative again and be doing fashiony things again. It's funny how like things have come full circle, and I'm back in the industry that I was to begin with, sort of thing. Anyway, so that's what's been going on in my life. What other things have I been knitting? Well, I went on a knitting retreat, didn't I? I went to a friend of mine who's a knitting teacher. She puts on retreats, and we all trekked off to the countryside just outside of Bath in the UK, and had 2 or 3 days doing knitting. So we had she taught some lessons for us. We made some little autumnal trinity things. Let me get them. I'm so not prepared for this. How cute are these? So this is a little toadstool, and this is glow in the dark, which is very exciting. And there's a little acorn. How cool is that? And then this one was an absolute to-do. this is a pine cone, and it looks a bit misshapen because I got fed up basically and couldn't be bothered to finish it. So I was like, oh, that'll do. Oh, they're cute. Little autumnal, like, trinkety things that you can, I might make a garlandy type thing, do a couple more acorns and toadstools. But they're gorgeous. And we had a little goodie bag that had some yarn in it. So this was the yarn that we got given that was glow in the dark. So there was also a pattern for a little ghosty. Whoops. So that was quite fun. And then on one of the days we went into Bath itself, because there are 2 yarn shops in Bath, which I've told you about in the past, I believe. Yes, I must have done. So they're quite different, the shops. They do carry quite different ranges of yarns. So one is owned by an American lady called Carmen, and she tends to stock sort of more American-y kind of... Have I actually pushed the right button? Am I recording okay? It better be. Yeah, I think I have. So she tends to stock more American brands. And then the other one, they have quite an eclectic mix. There's quite a few like German brands and sort of continental brands. So yeah, there's definitely room for two wool shops in Bath. So that's very exciting. I'll show you what I got. So we also had a talk from Cat and Sparrow, which is a yarn company here in the UK. And she likes to use woolly wool. So these are actually superwash, but she's moving away from superwash to more sort of sustainable kind of ethos, I think. But I bought these beautiful sort of autumnally colours from her, which I thought absolutely gorgeous. So this reminds me of sort of antique books, like sitting in a bookstore reading books. And then this one reminds me of Squirrel Napkin from the Beatrix Potter books. But together I thought they'd be quite fun. I do some sort of colourworky type thing. And the lady who runs this, called Rachel, she is also a tech editor, and she does knitwear grading. So her knitwear grading is probably a little bit out of my price range. So she told me to stick with it and work it out myself, basically, because otherwise it'd be quite expensive. But she's also doing my tech editing for my pattern. So that's nice to find someone reasonably local that I can use to do my tech editing. So that was quite a productive talk that she gave. And then I bought from a yarn story. I didn't get anything up there. I could have bought so much because there was so much beautiful yarn in there. But yeah, it was a little bit out of my price range. There was a yarn that I wanted to buy that was in a beautiful sort of tealy turquoisey, sort of burnt turquoisey kind of colour, which I still might go on their website and order when I win the lottery. But from wool, the first shop that we went to, I bought this chenille yarn here. So one of the ladies that was on the retreat was knitting a baby blanket in chenille and in like a cream colour for the baby. But I found these 2 beautiful colours. So you see there's sort of like a midnighty blue, I love this colour, and like a taupey colour. So I'm going to knit a blanket for my dog. For me also. My dog will probably steal it. Out of these, just because I thought they were a bit fun. And not my usual sort of yarn that I'd buy. So, but yeah, I was inspired by this lady. She was making a beautiful blanket. And that's about it, really. So we're coming into November and December in the UK. Can't believe that we're already nearly at November. And so yes, it's going to be a very busy time of year work-wise, plus my test knit, plus trying to get the pattern finished. So I'm not sure when my next video will be. Hopefully I'll try and keep up now. But if I don't see you, I hope you have a lovely holiday period, whatever you do, and I will hopefully see you again soon.